Hello friends, Adam here with FED. Today we're going to be looking at the results of and comments on a poll which asked, which is your favorite class system in Fire Emblem and why? Got a lot of really great comments. I promise I read them all. I wish we had time to go through all 136 comments that I have here currently, but it's a little too much for one video. So without further ado, let's look at the results, shall we? So which is your favorite class system in Fire Emblem and why? We had Rigid at 10%, Limited Reclassing won out with 37%, Free Reclassing with only 6%, Rank-Based Reclassing 22%, and finally Permanent Branched Promotions 24%. So Limited Reclassing came out on top. I kind of expected this to be the case. I think a lot of people like the reclassing in Fates and Awakening. I'm not entirely surprised by this. I did think that 3 houses had an outside chance of winning just because of the demographic on the channel, where a lot of the people who watch this channel started with 3 houses. But those who stuck around since those days, though, have probably branched out quite a bit at this point. So yeah, these poll results don't surprise me. So let's look at the reasoning behind some of your guys' choices, though. And again, I want to get as many comments in as I can, but I just can't necessarily spend, all day doing this. But I promise, I read every single comment. I always do. Read every single comment. So you were heard, and I like and appreciate everything that is posted. But again, we just don't have the time to look at all of them. So before we look at our first comment, please consider subscribing. We're trying to reach 25,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We had a pretty hot start in the past couple weeks, but if we could get another push going, that'd be good. So please subscribe, share this video with your friends if you wouldn't mind, or any other video on my channel, and encourage them to sub as well. Little things like that mean a lot. All right, well, let's start with our top rated comment. By top rated, I mean the comment that received the most likes. This is from Bruno Olinto. Sorry if I say any names wrong, by the way. Anyways, Bruno Olinto says, Fire Emblem Fates pretty much perfected the reclassing system in my opinion, because it requires you to play the game better. You can make some really powerful sweepers, but doing so requires careful management of resources, money, skills, experience, and precise timing. The latter especially if you're going for level 15 promoted skills from unoptimal classes, such as Life and Death for Super Odin or Super Ophelia. It rewards team planning in a very satisfying way. And to add to that comment, we have this from Joan Cruz, who says, I really enjoyed the Awakening/Fates style of reclassing, especially Fates with the addition of partner friendship seals. They give the player some freedom to play around with classes and earn more through supports, but it doesn't go overboard like in 3 houses where you can reclass anyone into anything. Now we'll talk more about that 3 houses thing in a minute, but for now I do want to focus on Awakening of Fates. I think the addition of the partner and friendship seal, like Joan mentioned, is a huge addition to the limited reclassing system. Awakening almost felt a little too limiting for me in the class selection. It made every unit still feel really different by their class pathing and stuff like that. And I think that's good. I would think you want your units to be unique enough. That's been a big topic on the channel the past couple days. But you want your units to be fairly unique, right? And the more reclassing you can do, I can see that kind of falling apart. And again, that's something we're going to talk about more when we talk about 3 houses in the Arcanea games. But I think Awakening and Fates both strike a good balance between options, replayability, but also keeping a unit's identity intact. And I think Fates, especially Conquest, does a really good job of limiting the player. There just aren't enough. It takes a while for heart seals to become available for reclassing, and it just takes a while for units to be able to switch around, so you still get a feel for how a unit's supposed to be, if that makes sense. Early game in Conquest, you get one reclassing thing. I think a lot of people use it for Corrin to put them in the different class that they want them in for the rest of the game. I know Jacob is a popular pick to put him to Paladin or something like that, but it's limited. There's not a ton, so you're still going to be running around with a pretty tight party, and while still having customization down the road. I think it works that way really well. All right, moving on to Jonathan Williams, who says, at first, I was leaning towards Rigid due to the Tellius series being my favorite, and enjoying the itemless promotion opportunities into third-tier classes in Radiant Dawn. Fun fact, in the Japanese version, Tier 3 promotions were not, you couldn't get them without items. You needed the Master Crown or whatever it was called. But when I remembered how much I also enjoyed the branch promotions of Echoes and Sacred Stones, some options and versatility, but not as complex and uncertain as to the best paths as Three Houses, Awakening, and Fates. I feel like that's just the right amount of options to allow some fun, prioritization, and self-expression in gameplay without being confusing or hard to pick. So, permanent branch promotions, I think that's a really good point about them that Jonathan brings up here, that it's just the right amount of options without it being overwhelming, right? Because I get that, especially my first time playing like Fates. I was like, okay, so I have Corrin, who has all the skills from their base class line in Conquest or whatever. I guess now I should probably switch to a different class, like switch to Swordmaster or something to get Astra or whatever. But then it's like, oh, do I need to switch to something else to get a different class? Like, you feel like you're missing out on things if you're not carefully considering your reclassing options. And that kind of worry kind of goes out the window with Echoes and Sacred Stones branch promotions, right? Because you're just set. You pick it and you're set and you forget it, right? I think Echoes has a little bit of more leeway with like the Dreadfighter loop and with the pitchforks. But those are, I don't know, especially pitchforks, they're like DLC kind of items, right? They're free, but they're still DLC. And the Dreadfighter loop, I mean, it's just Dreadfighter. You just do Dreadfighter over and over again until you want to go into a different class, right? But Sacred Stones does a really good job of making it still feel like a big like it feels like this really momentous choice, but you don't feel cheated out of the other option if you pick something else. I think that's something that's really good for some players if you're into this, right? That say you are a mage and you have to pick between what does mage pick between? It's like Mage Knight and Sage, right? To pick between Mage Knight and Sage, and you can have, so essentially it comes down to the better combat unit in Sage or the better higher movement unit and horse and stuff in Mage Knight. And they have different jobs and utilities that way, but they're still both magic units, right? So ultimately the one you choose, it's not going to like ruin your game. It's not going to ruin the character in any way. And I think that's actually pretty cool. I think a similar thing would be, I don't know, like, now I can't think of the name of the class I'm thinking of. Not Druid, Shaman, because Shaman goes into Druid, right? Or is it the other way around? I always get that one mixed up for the GBA games. Anyways, Dark Magic class, they can either go into a super Dark Magic class or they can go into a Summoner class. And, you know, there's like, again, like the better combat unit or one that has different utility. And I think that's a cool way to do it, but again, they're still going to be similar-ish over the course of your playthrough. So the choice doesn't have to be like super stressful, but it still allows you to express yourself. So anyways, all that to say, I get where Jonathan is coming from, and I think that's a really good point. All right. Next we have, I'm going to say that, I'm really sorry if I say this name wrong, Germo or Guillermo, is it Guillermo? Guillermo Dante says, I like several styles, love the Radiant Dawn or Echoes type, rigid but 2 promotions instead of 1. Also like the branch promotions from FE8, but based on how popular reclassing is in modern Fire Emblems, I'd like limited reclassing based on each character. I really dislike Three Houses reclassing units, had no personality or niche, because everyone could be everything. This is a really good point here about the rigid class changing, about 2 promotions instead of 1. I think Radiant Dawn and Echoes needed that because of the way their promotions worked, and that how long the games were, right? So in Radiant Dawn, if there wasn't a 3rd tier of promotion, your units would have all just been like promoted and stayed the same for the majority of the game, just because of how long it is. But giving you that 3rd tier made it so your army was ever evolving. And that's something that Echoes does really well too, is an ever evolving army. And I think in a rigid class system, you really need that for it to really stand out or stand on its own. I mean, as long as it, like, you could do it for shorter stuff too, as long as it fits, right? As long as your army is constantly upgrading and changing and becoming stronger, new classes and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be every unit changing constantly, but just like units changing over time. I think that's a really big deal. Like your army changing over time. I think that's a really big deal. Okay, now let's get into what is probably the most divisive topic in the comments. I saw a lot of negative for this one, and also there's a few positive here. But let's talk about free reclassing or free classing. And now that I think about it, I probably should have just combined this free reclassing and the rank-based reclassing, because everyone kind of bunched those together in the comments. So future reference, I'll probably refer to it that way. But so here, there's two comments I want to take a look at. One is negative, one is more positive on this. So first we have Inami in 4K HD who says, I'm between permanent branched and limited reclass. I think too much reclassing, like 3 Houses or the Arcanea games, can make units feel the same, especially when the only differences are weapon ranks and growth. Plus, it creates metas like the Wyvern Riders in 3 Houses, which is optimal, but doesn't feel fun, at least to me. And there's more there, but I wanted to move on now to Landry Ultra, who says, I like the reclassing in Fire Emblem 11 and 12. It allows units that are usually completely inferior to your other units to have some kind of niche and be able to fill a role the rest of your army may be lacking, even if they aren't particularly great at it. It lets archers use literally anything that isn't a bow and attack at 1 range. It lets you do things that should be illegal, like Mage Sita. I'd be lying if I said it didn't like the other reclassing systems, though. So yeah, I mean, just because you like one doesn't mean you can't like the others. I think everyone here kind of likes them all because we all like Fire Emblem, right? So yeah, it is interesting to think the two sides of the coin, right? Where it's like, oh well, it makes it boring, and it makes it so there's like one right option and you have to pick that option, and then there's the other side where it's like it can take bad units and make them fun to use still. Really just comes down to preference. Maybe you want to find the most optimal strat, and maybe that makes it annoying when everyone can do everything. I don't know, it's up to you. Or maybe you like doing goofy things, and that makes it, even the sandbox nature of that makes it worth playing for you, right? Landry Ultra brought up Mage Sita, which I'm pretty sure Mage Sita was like meta for a while in Shadow Dragon, which is funny. Like they just didn't understand how powerful the Wing Spear was or something. But I'm pretty sure Mage Sita was like the meta for a little bit. But yeah, it allows you to do all sorts of weird and wacky things and makes units worth using that normally really aren't long term. Okay, finally, I want to end with one positive note here. This comes from Luke G, who said, I loved 3 Houses class system so much. It allowed for so much replayability with it still having a sense of guidance with proficiencies in certain weapons. You could really experiment a ton and have majorly different playthroughs each time. But I also just got to playing Echoes and loved the permanent rigid class system. It was nice to have an experience where class decision wasn't a thing and have the focuses be elsewhere. I think all the class chain systems are great in their own right, and I would want future games to keep alternating between the different options. What a cool, level-headed take, Luke G. I really like this take. Yeah, they're all good. There's good everywhere, and all the reclassing and class changing systems. They're just different. All comes down to preference is the ultimate answer. I think so. Just so I'm not a fence sitter, I will say that I don't know for sure. I go back and forth in my head on this one. I think I prefer like Fate's class system. I think. But I also really enjoy a good rigid class system from like Thracia. Because like making units because a game that can make units feel unique without reclassing having to be a thing is really good to me. It's really cool. And I think Thracia does that. Berwick Saga does that perfectly. Stuff like that. So yeah, that's my thoughts. All right. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 25,000 subs. Help us do that. And please comment your thoughts. What is your favorite class system? And again, I do read every comment until, I mean, hopefully we get to a point one day where there's so many that I can't keep up. But for now, I definitely can. So I do read every comment. So please feel free to leave your thoughts. And I will catch you next time, friends.